Next up, we have Robert O'Brien. Robert, take it away, my friend.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Tom, and thank you to StutterFest for allowing me this opportunity to present. Yeah, wow. Well, after all those amazing books that we've just been shown, I'm going to talk about my own book. And I hope you can see that the title of this presentation is The Audiobook Adventure, Turning Fear into Fun. So my name is Robert O'Brien. I would describe myself as an unsuccessful covert stutterer. So as a covert stutterer, I learned to hide my stutter with tricks and avoidance. And I've spent many years training. I've had actor training and performance training in an attempt to be cured and fixed from my stutter. That didn't work out so well, obviously, as we all know, there is nothing to fix. I'm also an author. I published my own memoir a few years ago called Just One More Drive, the true story of a stuttering homosexual and his race car. So this is the title of the book. Some people have seen it. And yeah, it was a bit of an odyssey. I'm not going to go into the whole process of writing the book because time is short and I want to keep this tight. But suffice it to say, it was a step-by-step process. And the audiobook was something that has come very, very late in this process. The book has been on sale for a few years, and many people ask me, why is there no audiobook? And the simple answer is, well, no, sorry. The convenient answer is it's very expensive to produce audiobooks. And I used that as an excuse. And I didn't push to have it made with my publisher for that reason. The real answer is fear. Even though I am covert, when I'm reading out loud, and I'm sure we can all relate, when you're reading out loud in a public setting, it's very daunting. A lot of the old trauma shows up, the fear, the avoidance, the sweating, the shame, the panic. And I didn't want to do it. And that's really where this whole presentation began. How do I turn this fear into fun? Should I do it? Should someone who stutters record their own audiobook? So I basically looked at this fear and this process, and I divided it into three main steps. The first one is facing fear head on. And this isn't just a stuttering issue, it's a life issue. A lot of us avoid facing fear, but in this context, having to look at what was I afraid of? Why did I not want to take this on? So the first fear, like I just discussed, reading out loud in a professional setting. So to do an audiobook professionally, you book studio time. You go into a small room with a microphone, you sit on a chair, you have a technician in the other room, he's got a copy of the script, and you have a set of headphones and you take it away. And that was terrifying. I'd never done anything like that before. And when you look at YouTube videos or you research it, you're told that you need to have training, you need to bring emotion, you need to, really sell your reading personality. And that was terrifying to me. How much stuttering to include in an audiobook? So I was conflicted as a covert stutterer. Do I go for fluency or do I stutter and go for authenticity? And then I thought, well, this needs to be marketed. If people want to buy it, it needs to be pleasurable to listen to, but it also needs to be my voice. And I didn't know what that balance was going to be until I was there sitting on the chair. The third fear was the cost. It was quite expensive. And it was my dad who asked me, because my dad, bless him, has become a huge part of my own journey, and the book itself is a father and son journey. And he said to me, Robert, if money wasn't an issue, would you do it? And I said, yeah, I want to face this. I want to do it for me. And he said, okay, I'll pay under the condition that you're prepared. The fourth fear was the biggest. Dad died unexpectedly 2 weeks before I was due to record the audiobook. And I didn't know what to do. No, sorry, I did know what to do. I was going to do it for him, but I didn't know if I could. And this goes beyond stuttering. It goes beyond books. It goes beyond really anything I've ever experienced. It was like, am I going to be able to do this justice? He had paid for it, so I could cancel it and not do it and put it off for months and maybe never do it. Or honor him, make this part of his legacy. So those were the fears head on. And yeah, terrifying, and also really amazing, because the next step, moving past the fear, was to embrace my stutter and disclosing it and owning my speech. And I can tell you guys that I think for the first time in my life, it was the first time, not just disclosing, but ownership. In a studio with the studio themselves, I reached out and said, I stutter. I don't know how this is going to be. Would you be willing to take me on? And then the funniest aspect was having to train my technician, Aaron, about my stutter. So when you record an audiobook, there is a rhythm. You sit down and you start reading. And if there's a flub, if you flub a word, or if there's heavy breathing, or maybe a little bit of hit and hold, they might stop you and go, oh, let's take it back. And I had to train my technician. I said, no, that wasn't a flub. That was a bit of stuttering. And he was like, okay, Rob, got it. And I think it was the first time in my life that I've ever really owned my speech. I've feared close relationships. I've feared intimacy. And I've always shied away from that. I've always felt less than a man when I stutter. And particularly when I stutter in front of someone who's close to me or important to me, I'd feel inferior. And this was the first time I've ever really danced with it. And Aaron and myself laughed because he got to know my stutter nearly as well as I did. Finally, I got to embrace the sound of my own voice. I know I could hear Dad up in heaven laughing, going, you just love the sound of your own voice, don't you? And I'm like, who do I get that from? But in all honesty, when you hear your voice back, it doesn't sound the same. There isn't the same resonance as is in your head. And you hear it and go, I sound like that? So it was a wonderful experience in really embracing my stutter. And that was the second step in the audiobook adventure. The final one was finding the fun in the challenge. And like I said, the emotional strain, the emotional aspect of having to go through the book, read it after Dad passing so soon, I really didn't know if I was going to be able to pull it off. And I didn't want it to be overly emotional because, again, that's not what an audiobook is meant to be, but it did need to be authentic. And it was fun. There were moments where it was incredibly fun and freeing. And it was fun to be able to not get triggered. I was sitting there thinking, I don't understand how I can read fluently here And in the real world, my stutter asserts itself and I'm not fluent. And in the past, I would get angry. With this, it really was fun. It was just like, okay, that's what it is. I learned that not everything is fun all the time. When we talk about anything fun, we think of being happy, but there's moments of fun. So the audiobook took 20 hours, which was 4 days with 5-hour sessions. And I vividly remember the second day being the hardest. It was after the excitement and the high of being in the studio had worn off. And I was reading chapters 6 to 11 of the book, which were heavy. They were about my past trauma, about my stuttering recovery, about facing the fear and shame, and all of the trauma that many of us will have faced as stutterers. The third day was fun but embarrassing. And I remember having to talk to Aaron, my technician, and I said, look, I came out late in life, and the next few chapters around dating and bed sheets and doing ridiculous teenage things as a grown man, I felt genuine embarrassment. And because Aaron had never read the book and was right opposite me, and I'm the one reading it, there was no escape, there was no shield. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, again, we're going to either laugh or cry. And it was fun. It was one of the most satisfying things I've ever done. And like I said, it brought my journey as an author, and with just one more drive, it really brought it to a completion. There was a print book, an ebook, and now an audiobook. It was amazing to come back to my publishers and say, I've taken on the audiobook. And what I've seen, what I've learned from this, turning fear into fun, outside of the audiobook framework, it really is life. It's life, and I can see where I've learned to play it safe. And there's fear in everything. Fear in starting a new job, fear in starting a new relationship, fear in, walking outside the door. And I've tried very hard to be fluent and safe. And this whole experience has taught me that no, you face the fear and you work it like a muscle and you get stronger. You don't always succeed. I'm not always fluent and I don't always say the right thing, but it's really changed how I see myself and even this whole journey. It's actually not about the book. Dad once said it really beautifully when I was getting frustrated with this whole thing of like peddling a book. I feel like I'm peddling my trauma, and is it doing any good? And he said to me that it's never been about the book or about the race car in the book. It's been about the journey. And that, I think, is really the biggest win from this whole thing. It really is the journey, how we get changed, how we can embrace our fear, how we can embrace our stutter, how we can become more fully fledged people. So that wraps up what I'm going to share today. The audiobook itself, I tried very, very hard to have it available on all of the big platforms, Audible and Apple. It has been uploaded, but it won't be going live until next week at the earliest. So what I have done, I asked my publisher to put the audiobook into a Dropbox file, and I'm going to share that in the chat. So for anyone who would like to check that out, you can download the audiobook as a Dropbox link. I'm going to try to put it in the chat now. I'm not very good with tech, but I've asked Tom, he's cleared it. And if it doesn't work here, that's the link. So I will share that. You can download the book. It's broken down into chapters and you'll learn more about me and my journey. Alternatively, it will be available on the audio platforms in the next week or two, and I will share that as well. I see I have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to open it up to you guys. Any questions about my experience, or have you ever thought about taking on an audiobook?
Hi, Robert.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, how you doing?
Good to see you again. I've
Yeah.
been on some Stutter Law a few times. Hi.
Yes. I don't think I mentioned your name. I didn't see your name in there earlier, so I apologize. But yes,
No problem.
Robert's been a great supporter and guest on the podcast. But I'm so glad you did this, Robert.
Thank you.
I know you had thought about it and said no to yourself a number of times. But this is amazing, and I can't wait to listen to it. So thanks for doing this for yourself and for us too.
Yeah, thank you. I think, does someone have a question? Nicole, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I just wanted to say I'm proud of you for doing this. This is such a huge undertaking, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. But I would really like to hear a little bit more about that, like, internal fight, I guess, that you had between, do I stutter, do I not stutter? Like, this book is about stuttering, but it's about my life, so should I stutter in it? Like, very interested to hear more about that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question, and it's really a conflict I've always struggled with. As a covert stutterer, there is that temptation to try to pass myself off as fluent, and it's very tempting because you fit in. And being gay as well, it was like, really? I'm a stuttering homosexual? Are you kidding me? So it was like this double whammy. And to be honest, to answer the question, it's age. As I've gotten older, at this point, it's like, I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to change it. And as horrible as this was to learn, no one really cares. As a young stutterer, it always became about my speech and about fluency. And I remember the looks you'd get, that look of pity and shame that people would give, or they'd laugh. And you'd think, am I such a bad person? And really, the honest answer is, after all the work, all the trying to be fixed, whether that was actor training, performance training, working hard on tools and techniques, I just got very tired. And I was like, really, does anyone care? Why do I care so much? Why can I not be with it? And that was really, I think, the biggest question. Why can't I be with it? And, I think it goes back to what I think many of us have shared, the shame and the self-hate, and really the kind of trauma from the past of being kids. And as a kid, that's all I could do. I wasn't emotionally equipped to deal with that. And I didn't know how to take care of myself and manage those feelings. And as I've gotten older, and really just from seeing, like, people don't care. I've actually started a new job recently, and I was running around like a panicked ferret, and like, oh, I'm stuttering and they're going to think I stutter. And the worst thing about being gay is some of the kind of techies that I'm working with are guys, and that can trigger me. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I stop and think, they don't care. They don't notice my speech as much as I do, and they're not taken out by it. So if I stop taking myself out, I can show up and I can actually do something. I can be of service. I can stand for other people. And that's kind of how I've learned to deal with it. But that's on a good day. On a bad day, yeah, I freak out and go, oh my God, it's my stutter again. And then I have to make a cup of tea, sit down, be with myself for about 30 minutes. And then I think, right, let's get back on the horse and be of service too, because younger people aren't taught this either. And I think it's important to be that kind of role model to teach them that it is true. People don't care as much. So I hope that answers your question. I think I've got about 25 seconds left, so I will stop there. But thank you. It's a brilliant question to ask.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for speaking on, like, the intersectionality of, like, your identities and just trying to find who you are when there are so many things happening, right? So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom.